A farmer cultivating a baddie's buns instead of his field? Yeah, we all have seen it on the hub before, but talk about a farmer clapping a demon queen. Now that's something I can get behind. The manhwa is called Hero X Demon Queen, and it's about a farmer reincarnated as the hero. But instead of doing his job, all he does is stroke his pickle until one day, a demon queen pays his lonely bum a visit.
The story begins with the demons, led by their queen, Elizabeth, demolishing every other race, and humans, who were able to resist a bit, also failed after seeing her two massive cannons, ultimately resulting in their defeat. At the human empire, the high priest named Barrow mentions the hero in the legends, but gets kicked in the face by a fellow human, Wise, who reminds him that the queen is not asking for his opinion. Barrow mocks him for siding with the demons, calling him the traitor of the human race, causing Wise to transform his hand. But just as he is about to strike, the demon queen orders Wise to stop, resulting in him stopping right before Barrow's head. The demon queen then repeats the stuff Barrow said about the so-called hero and orders him to explain himself, threatening to make him suffer a fate worse than death if he refuses. Barrow explains that it is about a hero pulling out a holy sword to stop the demon race, further saying that he will never tell her where the sword is. However, after showing him a glimpse of her honkers, the queen finds herself in front of the holy sword named Alpha. She remembers that the hero will appear to pull out the sword. Surprisingly, she finds it pretty interesting and seems to be looking forward to his arrival. It's now the first year under the Demon Queen, Elizabeth's reign, and just like that, all the other years passed until eventually the 15th year arrived. Turns out, under Elizabeth's rule, all the races are able to live together in peace, and even formed an anti-hero alliance to stop their peace from being destroyed. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is currently present in the throne room, in front of the Holy Sword, and asks her subjects about the prophesied hero. The Chancellor of Elves, Twyla, and Chancellor of Dwarves, Heimerdinger, both explain that they aren't able to find anything about him, while the human named Aristotle says that they shouldn't be scared of the hero. The Chancellor of Demons, Jim, tells Aristotle that the Queen isn't afraid, but really wants to see him. The Chancellor of Beastman also adds that Elizabeth can easily annihilate the hero's continent. However, Twyla finds everything about the prophecy utter bullshit. Suddenly, someone chanting about rejecting the hero appeared, and that person turns out to be none other than the old hairy geezer, Barrow. Without hesitation, Elizabeth attacks and squeezes his body like squeezing a lemon over a grilled fish. Then, she questions him about the prophesied hero, and Barrow replies that it doesn't have to be true when the target exceeds the expectations. Wise agrees, saying that it's an offense to apply that prophecy to someone like Elizabeth, only to get slapped in the face and be told to get lost, causing the poor lad to fall into an aura debt. Afterward, she throws Barrow into a wall, exposing his daisy-patterned boxers. Apparently, Elizabeth wants to defeat the hero and make him become her stepping stone to fame. Additionally, she even created doomsday magic to fight against the hero, but is furious as he is nowhere to be found. Eventually, she decides to take out the sword on her own, causing all the chancellors to panic. Just as she tries pulling it out, a beam of light emerges, and Elizabeth begins to struggle. Nonetheless, she doesn't give up and tries her best to pull it out, while the others protect themselves using barriers from the energy emerging out. The light beam even punctures a hole in the ceiling, and in the end, Elizabeth is successful in pulling out the sword. After that, she mocks whoever said that only the hero can pull it out when suddenly, the holy sword makes her see a house where the hero might be currently residing. Realizing that she finally found him, Elizabeth uses abyss magic to create a teleportation circle. Wise tries stopping her but fails to do so. On the other hand, at Newbie Village, the legendary hero is busy farming on his own. Turns out his name is Leping, and he used to be an ordinary human in past life who liked watching farming-related videos. From making a dish named Lausafen from scratch to saving a rabbit suffering from heat stroke, he used to watch everything a typical boomer might. Just then, he found himself surrounded by dragons, in a completely deserted place. Luckily, with the help of the newbie system, he was able to learn basic survival skills. One day, the system told Leping to leave the village and start his adventure, but that is something he didn't wish to do. Apparently, the system wanted him to level up and eventually defeat the Demon Queen, but Leping didn't want to fight any demons either. The system reminded him that it was his mission to defeat the Demon Queen and kept on nagging him again and again. However, Leping knew that the system couldn't do anything but nag him and knew about the time barrier surrounding his village that kept him safe from outside threats. He spent his time farming, hunting, forging, and meditating until one day, the system had enough and crashed after calling him some pretty brutal curse words. But it didn't affect his life, and realizing that his tummy is beginning to rumble, Leping decides to collect some firewood. Just then, he realizes that he forgot his axe in the forest after chopping some wood and notices a storm forming right above him. Simultaneously, Elizabeth appears out of the clouds and mentions that she finally found the legendary hero, only to see him run towards his house, trying to save his clothes and dried fish from the upcoming rain. Luckily, he makes it in time and is able to save his dried fish and sausages. Just then, Wankai, the robot dog that the system gave to this loner, begins barking. Leping asks Wankai to head inside as it's about to rain, and after taking a look at the sky, notices something levitating up above. Elizabeth doesn't appreciate him addressing her as something. Leping instantly apologizes and tells her that he didn't see her clearly. To start things off, Elizabeth sends something in his direction and Leping, not knowing what it is, covers his face. However, that thing turns out to be the holy sword that after circling Leping, lands in his hand on its own. After hitting a rather cool-looking pose, Leping gets confused about how it flew into his hand, while Elizabeth wonders if the dull-looking dude is hiding his true powers. This results in her introducing herself and letting Leping know that she will destroy him completely. Meanwhile, Leping can't believe what the Demon Queen is doing at such a place and tells his wall-e-ath dog to stop barking at her. Soon after, 3 giant magic circles appear in the sky, followed by giant boulders coming out of them. This reminds Leping that the system said a meeting between Hero and Demon Queen is inevitable and figures that there isn't anything more he could do. With that being said, Leping begins walking towards his house, completely ignoring the things happening behind him with a tear in his eye. Before opening the door, he smiles at Elizabeth and thinks how he has lived a happy life without any regrets. Seeing him go inside and close the door on her makes Elizabeth even more furious, and she interprets his smile as Leping challenging her. After calling him an arrogant bastard, she launches the attack towards his house. The dog notices the giant boulders coming his way, and the software inside of him begins performing some calculations. Just when those massive balls are about to crush Leping, the dog completes his calculation, which results in a missile launcher emerging from his body. But it's not the only one, as it takes out all the weapons it's equipped with and fires them towards the giant boulders coming towards the house. The dog continues to bark at Elizabeth, and she figures that Leping is acting so arrogantly because he's relying on this magic tool. Afterward, she begins powering up, saying that everything in front of her is inferior and uses apocalyptic magic, which makes a giant energy ball appear. Following that, Elizabeth says that she's lost interest and now wants to end this little fight. Seeing the giant energy ball head towards the house, Wankai begins doing some calculations again, and after he is done, Wankai lets out a small-sized black hole from his mouth and shoots it towards the incoming energy ball. However, Elizabeth mentions that it's useless and tells the dog to disappear obediently. Just then, the small black hole begins to work its magic and ultimately makes the giant energy ball disappear. Elizabeth can't believe that her apocalyptic magic was taken care of so easily and questions what exactly Leping did from inside the house. Little does she know that he is laying on bed, prepared for death to arrive. Eventually, Elizabeth lands in front of Wankai and sees it try its best to scare her off. This causes her to start laughing and mention that she is the one who underestimated them. Following that, Elizabeth extends her arms, makes her wings appear, letting the dog know that she was only using 30% of her powers. After that, she fully transforms into demon god form, planning to show the dog what real terror feels like. Instantly, Elizabeth rushes towards the dog that is prepared to fight back, and the fight between the two begins. 1 hour later, after dreaming about pounding those demon cheeks, Leping wakes up and after taking a look around his house, questions about how he is still at home and not dead. He then gets out of his bed and, realizing that it's quiet outside, decides to open the door, thinking that the demon queen might still be waiting for him outside. Slowly, he opens the door and finds Elizabeth holding Wankai, which has sadly stopped functioning. After throwing it away, she begins walking towards Leping, apologizing for completely destroying the magic tool he was so proud of. Leping says that it's okay and asks if they can sit down and talk peacefully. Elizabeth agrees, but only after she is done, ripping him to shreds. Furthermore, she can't believe that he was able to push her to her limits and ultimately ends up losing consciousness. Leping quickly goes to check whether she is okay and takes the baddie in his arms. Slowly, her transformation along with her clothes starts to dissipate, leaving those H-cups out in the open. It is now nighttime, and Leping placed her on his cream-stained bed with her arms tied. Soon after, Elizabeth wakes up and still finds it hard to believe that she was defeated. Furthermore, she wonders why instead of eliminating her, he has only imprisoned her. After that, Elizabeth tries to free herself, but fails to do so and figures that the handcuffs are another legendary class artifact she has never seen. While thinking about how much power Leping is truly hiding, she takes a look around his room and thinks that the hero is even more wicked than she imagined. Soon after, Leping enters the room with some food and Elizabeth tells him not to expect her to beg for mercy. However, Leping mentions that he wishes to talk instead and lets her know that the handcuffs are for precaution, considering how terrifying, or one should say, formidable she is. Nonetheless, he decides to unlock the handcuffs so they can talk, but Elizabeth interprets it as Leping calling her not formidable enough to fight him. Additionally, she thinks that he wants a taste of her juicy melons. In the end, he ends up unlocking her handcuffs and reassures her that he has no ill intentions. Knowing that her current situation is pretty unfavorable, Elizabeth decides to go with his demands for now. But Leping loses all the courage he gathered and decides to leave. The reason he didn't eliminate her when he had the chance is because a demon queen this powerful surely must have a resurrection skill. Furthermore, he can't eliminate a person and wants to resolve the conflict between the two of them instead. As long as he shows that he poses no threat, everything will be fine according to Leping. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sees him laughing like a maniac and thinks that he might be mocking her. After that, he takes a look at the robot dog from Temu, mentioning that he has become quite a mess. Elizabeth asks if the dog is his most powerful magic tool, not aware that he just developed Wankai purely out of boredom. She then begins smirking, thinking that Leping was careless as she can now use abyss magic to recover quickly, and with his little robot gone, there isn't much he can fight her with. However, Leping takes out the memory card from Wankai, completely unaware that Elizabeth is standing behind him, ready to rip his head off. Afterward, he opens a cupboard and reveals 6 more Wankai that he produced. Elizabeth instantly stops in her tracks, and Leping picks one of the Wankai, inserts the memory card which results in it to start functioning again. He says that he mostly keeps Wankai at home, as it can sometimes be naughty, and as expected, Elizabeth interprets it in a completely opposite manner. Then, she suddenly notices a strange smell, and Leping reveals that he made some food to warm her up. Elizabeth mentions that only the weak need to eat, and that she has already reached a transcendent state. However, her body says otherwise, and her tummy begins to growl. Leping informs her that all the vegetables and grains are grown by him, asking Elizabeth to have a taste. Eventually, Elizabeth ends up picking one of the dumplings and taking a bite. While Leping wonders if someone of her class appreciates food cooked by him, Elizabeth continues to eat more and more dumplings, realizing how tasty it is. She was unaware that the world had such a delicacy. After Elizabeth takes the last bite, She feels a strange sensation in her throat, followed by her making happy noises and commenting on how spicy the food is. After that, Elizabeth questions about what Leping did to the food, and he replies that he added a bit of chili, wondering if she can't handle spicy food. To deal with the spiciness, Leping makes a pork congee for her, making Elizabeth think that he is playing with her by feeding her poison, then giving the antidote. Nonetheless, she decides to take a bite, and just as the spoon enters her mouth, Elizabeth feels as if she is in the middle of clouds. A feeling of peace envelops her, and all the problems of her life suddenly disappear. Discovering this feeling of living carefree makes her realize how truly insignificant she is. After coming back to her senses, Elizabeth notices that eating this has advanced her powers once again. Following that, she questions Leping about his true motives, to which Leping replies that he just wants them to research a way to coexist together. However, she takes it as him, revealing his true intentions of wanting Elizabeth to become his subject and help her become even stronger. Additionally, Leping offers to treat her with more yummy food if she agrees, which makes her even more furious. Elizabeth also perceives it as Leping wanting to make her strong and test whether she can beat him. In the end, Elizabeth tells him to forget about it and climbs on the bed, letting Leping know that she will agree because she wishes to pursue the pinnacle of strength. While Leping finds it hard to understand what she's saying, Elizabeth adds that she will never lower her head in front of him, and if he tries to make her do it, she will sacrifice everything just to destroy him. Leping hesitantly agrees, asking Elizabeth to get along. Lastly, she gives him permission to research the perfectly proportioned juicy body of hers, only if he supplies her with delicious treats. It has now been 1 year since that day, and Leping is busy cutting firewood using the holy sword. He thinks about how things have gotten complicated as due to Elizabeth. The protective barrier around the village has been destroyed. Without the barrier, his village is now exposed to the wilderness, and the monsters appearing nearby don't seem to be simple. Still, he is glad that none of them dare to approach because of the Demon Queen. Just then, Elizabeth shouts at him to bring lunch as it's feast time already, and that Baddie's little slave leaves everything to go cook for her. After entering the house, Leping sees her watching a hottie getting clapped. She doesn't seem to mind her Garlock the Destroyer-looking belly and continues munching on snacks, complaining to Leping about having the same recordings on his TV. Leping lets her know that the system disappeared and informs her about lunch. Instantly, she gets up and uses her magic to create tiny wings on her back that struggle to make her whale-sized body fly. She then questions about the chips as they are starting to make her lazier and thinks that he might be trying to paralyze her using slow-acting poisons. Leping replies that eating too many chips can accumulate fat. This makes her take a look at the mountain forming below, and she decides to use deep sea magic. Surprisingly, this magic is capable of making Elizabeth slim again, and she elaborates that it converted her fat into magic power. He can't believe that magic can be used in such ways, while Elizabeth mocks him as another one of his tricks was foiled by her. Following that, she mentions how lunch suits her taste perfectly and begins devouring everything in front of her. Leping lets her know that he can make more if this isn't enough, and she interprets it as him wanting to fatten her even more. After that, he leaves to get the dessert he made while Elizabeth seems furious at him for treating her like a pig. Turns out the dessert he made is Elizabeth's favorite pudding, and one look at the pudding makes her eyes sparkle. Shockingly, it somehow improves her mood instantly, making him realize that the Demon Queen might not be hard to deal with. While on the other hand, an old fart, holding a hottie's hand, seems to be running away from ghost-like creatures. One of those creatures prepares to release an attack and uses the skill named Spatial Tearing. This ability tears apart the fabric of reality and surrounds them from all directions. Additionally, he tries attacking the old man but fails to do so, and eventually uses another skill called Nail Cage to restrict their movements. After tanking the attack, the old man advises his daughter, Evil, to run away while he holds the enemies down. However, Evil refuses to leave him behind and escape by herself. Her father then mentions the promise he made with his wife to keep evil safe. In the meantime, the ghost prepares an attack named Ghost Fire, but at the same time, the old man also powers up, wanting to use his strongest move. Following that, he sends a slash towards the ghost that manages to cut both him and his Ghost Fire in half. The other ghost notices his buddy cut in half and tries to absorb him into his own body. This causes a weird reaction to take place, making both their bodies merge into a single one. Just then, Evil decides not to leave her pops behind and fires some Nerf bow arrows towards the ghosts. However, they are easily able to deflect those soft things, making the old man warn her daughter that she is not skilled enough. Suddenly, the ghost that merged into a single body begins making its move and begins dashing towards the old man. In an instant, it appears right in front of him and punches his sword, which sends him flying and crashing into a boulder. The geezer's calcium-deficient bones find it hard to handle this attack, and he asks Evil to not worry about him and run away. To his surprise, the third ghost also appears behind the bigger one and ends up merging with them, forming an even more giant and stronger ghost. At this point, Evil begins begging them to spare her father, but the ghost couldn't care less and is about to end their lives when out of nowhere, something completely crushes the ghost underneath it. Once the dust clears, Evil gets terrified after seeing a humongous mammoth standing right in front of her, responsible for crushing the ghost. On top of the mammoth's head is a shrine where the immortal frog resides. The immortal frog asks his big brother about what they should do with the humans, and surprisingly, the big brother turns out to be Wankai, who is present on top of the immortal frog's head. Wankai asks the frog not to harm the humans and take them to his master instead. The next morning, Evil wakes up and finds herself on a bed inside a completely unknown room. She wonders where father is and remembers that he got his ass handed to him by the ghosts. Without wasting anything, she gets out of the bed, puts on her shoes and runs towards the door, calling out to her dad, only to see him flexing his biceps to all the hot single moms. Leping mentions that he must train a lot, and the old man says that it's his duty as a warrior. Leping seems really excited to see a warrior for the first time, and Wankai is also overjoyed to see his master pleased. However, Elizabeth eventually loses her cool and kicks the living heck out of the poor dog, sending it flying away. She then walks towards Wankai and questions why it brought those weaklings with him. While Leping's dog shakes in fear, he begins getting all touchy with the old man, commenting on how sturdy his muscles are. Seeing how much Leping appreciates and likes his muscles, the old man ends up ripping his shirt, exposing everything except for the skyscraper. Leping gets even more excited, and the old man continues flexing his muscles until Evil questions what he's trying to do. This results in a moment of silence, followed by the father realizing that Evil finally woke up. Just then, Elizabeth appears in front of Evil and asks her to get out. She then gets closer, telling Evil that it's a warning and that she is the one who came first. Luckily, Leping intervenes, suggesting going inside as it's rare to have guests. Inside, Leping apologized for not offering anything but barley tea he made. Evil questions if this is the same potion that immediately healed all his injuries, but Leping mentions that all he fed him was just some well water before. While Elizabeth wonders if Leping plans on doing some experiments with the two of them as well, the old man says that he vaguely remembers being carried by Wankai to the newbie forest. There, Leping made the old man drink some water, making him instantly wake up, refreshed. He believes that he wouldn't have been able to see Evil again if it wasn't for Leping's help. Evil then questions if she can drink such a precious thing, and Leping tells her that there is no need to be this polite. Eventually, the two of them end up drinking the barley tea and instantly lose their minds. They start to feel as if they are Greek gods, lying on a field, gazing at the birds flying in the sky. Elizabeth then lets them know that they can't have anything else, while Leping apologizes as he has nothing else to serve them. After that, Leping asks the old man, Burns, about how he was attacked. Burns replies that it was because of the elf bloodline in Evil's body. Apparently, her mother is an elf and fell in love with Burrs even when the elf race forbids intermarriage with other races. This makes Leping realize that the elves are trying to catch them, but Elizabeth doesn't buy this, saying that the Demon Queen removed the ban on intermarriage between races. Burrs adds that Evil's mother was forced to return to Elf land while he ran away with Eve. Leping then asks if the elves sent their people after them after finding out about their existence, to which Burrs says that the elves spared them and the people after them are from the Dark Guild of the Demon Realm. Leping gives Elizabeth a side eye after hearing about the Demon Realm, making her furious at him. Afterward, she asks Burrs to explain everything he knows about the Dark Guild. He explains that they are doing experiments on humans to resurrect the Demon Queen Elizabeth. Elves are one of the materials they need, which is why they are after Evil as well. Leping once again starts looking at her, making her confront him for having such thoughts. Leping reassures her that he knows that she was with him this whole time. Following that, Elizabeth asks Burrs who told him about Elizabeth's demise, and he replies that the Demon Queen has been missing for 500 years. This comes as a surprise to Leping as Elizabeth has only been living with him for a year. Elizabeth then asks him about how the Demon Queen dies. Evil lets her know that according to rumors, she was eliminated by the hero. It is said that the battle lasted for a month, and in the end, the hero sacrificed himself and died with the queen. Hearing about these rumors makes Elizabeth furious, and the two of them find themselves surrounded by bloodlust. Eventually, she mentions that the rumor is false, and those two instantly agree. Leping then elaborates that he is the legendary hero, making the father-daughter pair shocked. Furthermore, he says that the girl next to him is the Demon Queen named Elizabeth, and at this point, the information turns out to be too much for them to handle, causing them to go in a state of shock. However, Elizabeth still seems pissed as she interpreted it as Leping making fun of Elizabeth for getting imprisoned by him. After slapping the table in anger, she gets up and starts walking away, cursing Leping for ruining her chances with a hot musclehead. After she leaves, Burrs takes a breath of relief and asks Leping about how he plans to deal with them. But Leping is as clueless as them and suggests calming down first. That night, the two of them are sleeping, talking about everything about the hero and queen they just heard. Evil wonders why Leping saved them if he wanted to eliminate them later, and Burrs replies that in the eyes of beings like him, their existence is no different from ants. Just then, they hear a footstep, followed by Leping asking why they aren't asleep yet, creeping Evil out. However, what Leping really means is that he wants to play cards with them, which comes as a surprise to the old man. After that, he explains the rules to those two, making them think that Leping might be testing them to decide whether to let them live or not. Following that, Leping begins distributing the cards, and Evil asks him about the name of this game they are playing. To her surprise, he hasn't come up with a name yet and decided to call it Dragon Fight. This horrifying sounding game scares those two and surprises Elizabeth as well, who is spying on the three of them. Leping further explains that they have to join the heroes in order to defeat the dragon, but it's up to them whether to join forces with the hero or the dragon. Hearing him explain makes them sure that this is a test, and with that being said, Leping begins dealing the cards, advising them to choose carefully. After picking up his cards, Leping asks them to pick theirs as well. Burrs advises Evil not to hesitate and take her cards, but as soon as she touches one of them, she realizes that just picking cards is draining all her magic powers away. She apologizes for not being able to pick up, and Burrs tells her to leave the rest to him. After that, Leping questions if they want to be a dragon, but both of them instantly refuse out of fear. Leping figures that he can win if he gets some specific cards, and once again confirms if they don't want to be the dragon. This results in him going for the cards, but after flipping 3 of them, he doesn't seem to be satisfied with the results. Those two start to think that he might be dissatisfied with their performance, and after taking his turn, Leping lets Burns know that it's his turn to go. After thinking about it for a while, Burrs decides to pick his card, but instantly realizes that every time he plays a card, It's at the cost of his life force. After playing his card, Burr's finger shrinks, but he still advises Evil to leave everything to him, causing her to pass her turn. After thinking about all the patterns, Leping realizes that he will be at a disadvantage and decides to pass as well. Burrs can't believe he passed his turn, and when asked if he really did not want it, Leping agreed. Burns then figures that Leping plans to consume his life force by making him play and uses a combination of cards called the Flying Dragon. This uses some of his life force as well, and the price he has to pay for it is his leg. The move Burrs used causes a dragon to appear, surprising them both. It then opens its mouth and attacks Leping with its flame breath, while Elizabeth continues to spy on them quietly. After the dragon disappears, Burns realizes that he might be doomed as he offended the hero. But Leping seems lost in thought and later compliments Burrs for playing his move well. However, he still decides to pass and forces Burrs to use another one of his cards, causing him to lose another finger. Evil still skips her turn, and this time, Leping uses a card, which the two of them can't beat. With a smirk on his face, Leping once again uses a combination of cards, causing giant waves to appear and drown the two of them. While they struggle to catch their breath, Leping uses another combination of cards and this time makes a chariot appear. Burrs figures that he can't beat it, but Evil decides to fight it head-on. Burrs reminds her that she will be paying with her life force, but she is tired of always hiding behind his back. Eventually, Evil ends up using a combination as well, resulting in another chariot to appear and battle Leping's one. The two chariots then collide, causing an explosion, and Leping's one ends up winning the battle. Burrs questions Evil if she's okay, to which she agrees. Leping lets them know that they need to protect their teammate even if it means breaking their own cards. But before Burrs can even grasp this so-called determination, Leping mentions that it's too late. This confuses the two of them while Elizabeth figures that something bad is about to happen. Just then, Leping ends up breaking two of them Joker cards that cause the sky to crack, followed by the appearance of a demonic clown. Elizabeth, still trying to figure out what he summoned, notices that it's a level 3 demon. The clown starts off by making a heart sign, and after noticing Elizabeth, questions what she's peeking at. After that, he makes a knife appear out of nowhere and warns Elizabeth that he might just eliminate her. Elizabeth can't believe that Leping summoned a 3-star demon when she just barely reached that level. Burrs then apologizes to Evil for being so powerless, and before long, his life force begins draining like crazy, causing him to cough blood. Leping notices his worsening health, and after taking a look at the cards that old guy is rocking, he believes that Burrs was just letting him play when he could have won a long time ago. This results in him putting away all his cards that causes the clown to disappear. After staking the cards, Leping decides to leave and advises them to take some rest. While walking away, Leping apologizes for the trouble while they are still confused about Leping's true motives. Meanwhile, Elizabeth believes that his real plan is to seize the chance to strike the queen. The next day, Leping asks Burrs if he's sure he wants to leave so quickly, to which he replies that they can't bother him anymore. Additionally, he promises to keep everything a secret, and Evil asks him about the gift. Leping lets her know that it's just ordinary barley tea and ends up giving Burrs the deck of cards they were playing with. Seeing the card surprises him, but Leping believes that Burrs should take it as his own card skills suck. Elizabeth then whispers to Burrs and advises him to get out of here. As expected, they run faster than your ex when you mention commitment. Now that they are gone, Elizabeth tells her trusty slave to make some food for her. The two of them kept on running until Evil told Burrs that she can't do it anymore. This results in him finally stopping and catching his breath, mentioning the test of hero and the threat of the Demon Queen. Apparently, last night, Elizabeth appeared in front of them in her true form and attacked their neck. However, they quickly realize that they are completely safe, and all she did was put a curse on them. Elizabeth then says that they are prohibited from revealing any information about the Queen and hero. As expected, they instantly agreed, and Elizabeth further said that they would lose their heads if they went against her will. Back in the present, Evil tells Burrs that this place looks familiar, and after taking a look, Burrs realizes that it's the same place where they had their last battle. Meanwhile, Wenkai thinks that sending them back this far should stop them from bothering his master, thinking about how he was the real reason behind that geezer's speed. Evil then mentions that the corpses of Dark Guild apostles are still present, and Burrs decides to get out before any more high-level demons appear. Just then, Wenkai notices something approaching but decides to ignore it as he doesn't want to be scolded by the hottie at home. With that being said, he leaves through the transportation portal while Burrs finds more of the apostles standing in front of him. However, one of them looks pretty similar to Ikago's Vastolord form. Burrs instantly recognizes it as the Great Apostle, but Evil still seems confused about this new creature. Apparently, the Great Apostle is a 2-star demon who came along with several 4- and 3-star apostles. Evil tells Burrs to run as the gap in strength is too big, but he replies that after seeing the realm of Hero and Elizabeth, the apostles are nothing. In the end, he decides to take out the cards that Leping gave him, causing a great amount of energy to be released. Furthermore, he says that he has become timid since his wifey left him and makes up his mind to go and save Evil's mother from the elves. With that being said, he takes out the cards and uses a combination, resulting in him summoning a giant elf. Evil instantly recognizes that elf as her mother, while Burrs others the elf to attack. This results in the giant elf aiming and shooting an arrow towards the apostles, which is more than enough to take care of the ordinary ones. Lastly, it makes its way towards the Great Apostles, and even though he manages to catch the arrow, the brutal force behind it begins overwhelming the demon, allowing the arrow to rip its head off. Following that, he puts the cards back and the elf disappears as well. Burrs, after catching his breath, says that he should change his profession and go by the name Card Master. It has now been a week since Burrs left, and Leping is eating watermelons, thinking about his hybrid fruit breeding method. However, without anyone to share it with, he always feels it's missing something. Furthermore, he has now come across a demon queen, a warrior, and an elf, which has caused his heart to grow restless as he wishes to see more. Suddenly, a smoke cloud appears in front of him, followed by the arrival of Elizabeth, who questions why Leping looks so down. Leping replies that he wants to go out but can't as he's too weak. To his surprise, Elizabeth offers to take him outside on a trip, causing Leping to jump out of excitement. She then tells him to stop talking nonsense and change his clothes. Following that, he puts on a new Supreme drip and gets complimented by Elizabeth for his sewing skills, to which he agrees, saying that they are his specialties. With a snap of her fingers, Elizabeth makes a transfer door appear, informing Leping that they can travel to the nearest town through it. But before they enter the portal, Leping says that he has a few questions. Apparently, he doesn't want her to leave him alone, wants Elizabeth to keep her emotions stable and act low-key. However, Elizabeth interprets it as him trying to control her and furiously agrees. Lastly, he asks her to come back with him after seeing the outside world, to which she agrees as well. However, she also seems to have a request, which is that when they return from the trip, she wants him to make her a super deluxe assorted fruit pudding. Hearing her talk about pudding surprises Leping, and Elizabeth asks if there is a problem with her request. He refuses and enters the portal along with Elizabeth, leaving the poor dog alone. After traveling through the portal, Leping finds himself standing in Disneyland, having a castle at the top. After taking a look at his surroundings, Leping mentions that it's like stepping into another world. He then notices an equipment shop and another shop selling pigs. While he continues hopping from one shop to another, Elizabeth thinks that the world hasn't changed much in 500 years. Leping then mentions that it's not as chaotic as Burrs said, and Elizabeth comments that it's all thanks to the strong foundation she established. Before, various forces were in conflict, and she used her strength to suppress them all and establish new rules. This means the one who really saved the world is Elizabeth, and not the hero. However, Leping isn't even present by her side to listen to her stories, making her realize that he couldn't care less. Meanwhile, Leping notices some stuffed toys and asks the little girl named Annie if she made them herself. Annie agrees and offers him a lower price if he likes them. Just then, the adult version of Peppa Pig appears and kicks Annie's stall. He then confronts her for setting up a stall when her church hasn't paid their debt. This scares the kids who were present with Annie as well. Annie then says that the pig never protected them, so why should they pay protection money? The pig replies that the street now falls under his territory, so now she has to provide monthly tributes. However, Annie disagrees, saying that when the nun returns, they all will be in trouble. The pig gets furious and decides to tear down the church when unexpectedly, Leping intervenes. But when the pig questions what he wants, Leping loses all the balls he worked hard to gather. Additionally, Elizabeth wants him to mind his own business, and when Leping asks for her help, she flat out refuses. The pig once again asks Leping about his intention, and after thinking about it, he begins asking for the public's help to condemn the pig. But to his surprise, none of them want to be a part of this, causing the pig to laugh at him for being so stupid. Furthermore, the pig figures that he must be a foreigner and likes the baddie next to him as well. Leping, trying to calm him down, offers him the stuff in his backpack. The pig refuses and orders his lackeys to beat Leping and bring back Elizabeth with them. Seeing them trying to make a move and imprison her, Elizabeth loses her cool, which causes storm clouds to appear. This freaks out the pig, who wonders how the weather suddenly changed. Leping tells Elizabeth that she might destroy the whole town and tries his best to calm her down. In the end, she agrees to spare the pig, and Annie, who is able to see people's magical powers, realizes that Elizabeth is pretty powerful. Freaked out, the pig questions if they want to stand up for the church orphans, and Leping asks him how much money he needs for protection. The pig replies that it's 10 gold coins for 2 months, making Elizabeth laugh at him for making a fuss over such a small amount. Additionally, she tells Leping that she has an uncountable amount of treasure. But when Leping asks to borrow some, promising to pay back by selling his vegetables, she refuses and tells Leping that she didn't bring any to begin with. The pig then begins questioning if they have the money, and Leping asks if the products in his bag will do. Hearing this statement makes the pig lose his cool when out of nowhere, a bag filled with coins hits him in the face. He gets mad at first, but calms down after seeing the bag filled with gold coins. The person responsible for the money turns out to be a centaur named Hawthorne. The pig recognizes Hawthorne from the Sword Saint Guild and decides to walk away. After he leaves, Annie thanks everyone for the help, and Leping tries to give his banana to Hawthorne as a reward, which he refuses to accept. However, he still asks for their help in something. When Annie asks about the help he needs, Hawthorne asks them to follow him, saying that it will solve her financial problems as well. Elizabeth refuses to go with him, but Leping wants to at least hear what he has to say. On the other hand, the little kids ask Annie if she is leaving, and she advises them to return to the church, promising to come back soon. Eventually, they arrive at the pub where Hawthorne asks everyone to stay close to him. Once inside, the pervs begin ogling at Elizabeth's bouncy bags. This results in Elizabeth giving them a deadly stare, making them scared for their lives. She then blames Leping for making her come to such a place. Finally, they arrive at the private room where Hawthorne wants to have the conversation, and as soon as he opens the door, several short-heighted baddies surround him. Hawthorne then lets them know that he has a wife or two, shocking the self-pleasuring expert. Afterward, he decides to introduce his wives and starts off by introducing Hasha, the shield warrior. After her comes Lolo, the assassin, and Glee, the mage. Lastly, he introduces Jellia, who is an elf and an archer. Elizabeth then interrupts, asking Hawthorne to quickly state his business, making Hasha complain about Elizabeth's attitude. Elizabeth replies that this is how the queen is, and Lolo mentions that there must be something wrong with Elizabeth's brain. Jellia also calls Elizabeth a half-breed with a bit of elven blood, questioning what someone like her is doing in front of her. Elizabeth replies that if she wants to bring destruction upon herself, don't blame the queen. Luckily, Leping takes out the pudding from his backpack, which ends up improving her mood in an instant. After feeling lucky that he came prepared, Leping informs everyone that Elizabeth is the princess of a tribe, and he is her servant. Lolo finally understands why Elizabeth's manners are so strange, while Jellia begins mocking her for being one of the people who still worships the queen in the demon realm. Leping adds that Elizabeth is still adapting to cultural differences as it's her first time outside. Following that, Hawthorne asks for their help in joining them in a treasure dungeon. However, Leping doesn't know what a treasure dungeon is and asks Annie about it. Annie explains that they are places where ancient beings hide their valuable things. Hawthorne agrees, saying that the condition to open the barrier of the dungeon is to bring 8 people. This makes Leping realize that he wants to make up the numbers, and Annie, realizing that she is one of the members, asks if she cannot go. Leping asks why she doesn't want to go to such a precious place, and she replies that being a mere 4-star magician like her can't do much. But little does she know that Leping can't use magic at all. Hawthorne reassures them that they just need to fill in the numbers, as he will take care of the battles inside. Finding out getting a few thousand gold coins motivates Annie to join the party, and Leping makes sure that Elizabeth is on board as well. After that, Hawthorne signals Glee, and she takes out a magical crystal ball. Apparently, this crystal ball is able to measure the magic of whoever puts their hand on it. Hawthorne's measurement turns out to be 8,769, and Annie believes that it should be at least demon spirit level. Hawthorne agrees, saying that he is 4 stars while all his wives are 5 or 4 stars as well. Following that, Annie decides to give it a go and gets mocked by Glee for having a measurement of 300. While Annie apologizes for not having enough magic level, Leping decides to go next and eventually puts his hand on the ball. But nothing seems to happen for a while, and eventually, the crystal measures his magic level as 0. This surprises Hawthorne, as even martial artists have more than him. Disappointed, sits back, realizing that he's doomed for life. Lolo questions if he'll be of no help at all, but Leping replies that he's pretty good at farming and takes out some of his bananas. This makes the wives realize that he truly is a countryside bumpkin. Hawthorne then asks Elizabeth to try it as well, and Leping also advises her to cooperate with them. Even though she is annoyed at them already, she ends up putting her hand on the crystal, causing it to glow at a pretty high intensity, blinding the nearby spectators. Leping freaks out and calls out Elizabeth's name. However, she already knows and decides to play with them for a little while. To everyone's surprise, she keeps her measurements to exactly 1 number below Hawthorne's. Annie mentions that she's just like Hawthorne, while Glee says that Elizabeth is also a 4-star demon spirit. Hawthorne is also glad to have such a powerful princess joining their side. Annie then asks Hawthorne about how they will enter the dungeon, and Glee takes out a magic scroll. She makes a magic circle appear on the ceiling, which ends up teleporting them to a pretty odd-looking place. Leping mentions that he got dizzy from teleportation, while Annie seems scared of the aura she's sensing. With that being said, Hawthorne suggests going inside the dungeon, but Elizabeth decides not to go and tells Leping to go home. Hasha yells at her for changing her mind at the last minute, and the other 2 girls also start confronting Elizabeth. However, she is also ready to throw hands, but Leping ends up intervening, putting his hands together to request Elizabeth to take him with her. Annie then asks Elizabeth if she noticed that the cave has a magic power similar to hers. While Leping is still confused about what Annie said, Hawthorne pushes him away and tries to riz the redhead, promising to protect her. But all Elizabeth does is look at him and walk away, agreeing to play with them, and advises everyone to follow her, making Hawthorne furious. After fulfilling the members' limit, they are able to enter the dungeon, and as soon as they enter, the barrier gets closed again. Leping realizes that he can't exit, and Elizabeth reveals that one who is weaker than the person responsible for the barrier can't leave. So, until they meet the requirements of the barrier setter, none of them can leave. Glee mentions that they can defeat it as long as Hawthorne is with them, but gets shut down by Hasha. When Anne asks Jellia about what Glee just said, Jellia makes an excuse, saying that she meant gold coins. Leping notices the path splitting and Lolo asks Hawthorne if they should split up as well. But he asks Glee to use her move, and after striking her wand on the ground, magic is released that enters all the different paths of the dungeon, letting her find the shortest route to treasure. However, Elizabeth finds her ways ignorant, and soon after, Glee realizes that there is no end to the dungeon. When Hawthorne asks about the situation, Glee tells him that the maze seems to be endless, just like his drive to get more wifeys. Jellia suggests using her spirit divination, while Lolo wants to split into groups. Leping figures that Elizabeth knows that answer, and she replies that the maze is just an illusion. However, when he asks for her help, she refuses as she wishes to watch them perish. Annie mentions that the third cave is the right one, surprising Elizabeth. When Leping asks her how she knows, Annie replies that the special magic is coming from that direction. However, she gets yelled at by Glee for making random assumptions and suggests they go to the last path as there are less monsters. When he asks the others, Lolo still wishes to act in small teams, while Hasha says that they should listen to Glee. In the end, he decides to go with Glee's decision as well, but suddenly, Annie tells them to pick any path but the last one. She then uses puppet magic and sends one towards the last path, only for it to be devoured by a monster named Mimic Worm. Elizabeth explains that it's found in the bodies of huge monsters, and Lolo wonders if Glee found the fewer monsters inside the worm's stomach. Following that, Elizabeth tells Leping to let them struggle and begins walking away while the other two follow. Lolo asks Hawthorne if she should make her clone follow them, but he refuses, thinking that she might not be an ordinary princess. In the end, he decides to follow Elizabeth in the path she chose as well. All of them continue to walk deeper into the path, completely unaware of the dangers lurking inside. Well, whatever is hiding inside the dungeon can't be stronger than Elizabeth, right? Comment Demon Queen if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.